Welcome to the MS Dev Show, episode number 148. This week we talk with Den Delimarsky about the new docs.microsoft.com, programming languages used late at night, how to work your way into the job you want, and now you can start judging who lives and who dies from self-driving cars.
This episode of the MS Dev Show is brought to you by Espose, the market leader of .NET and Java APIs for file business formats. Natively work with DocX, XSLX, PPT, PDF, MSG, MPP, image formats, and many more.
This week we have Den Delimarsky, Program Manager on the Docs team. Welcome, Den.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. Carl, what's going on over on your end?
We're getting ready for build, and what that means is we're making all sorts of build plans. And while we have a bunch of stuff that you'll find out as the conference progresses, one of the things that we'd like to announce is that Windows Weekly is having a meetup at Build this year at Pike Brewing, and we are going to be there as well. So if you would like to meet us, Mary Jo Foley, Paul Thrott, Brad, and everybody else who is attracted like that, you can meet us there at Pike Brewing Thursday, May 11th, 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. There is no RSVP. The first people that get in until the bar is full, get in.
So I shouldn't show up late.
Don't show up late.
Okay, fine. I guess I have no excuse since I live here, which is really strange, not having to make travel plans or anything because Build is like right around the corner, and until you mentioned it to me, I didn't realize how close it was. It's coming up. So I'm looking forward to talking to a lot of great people. And Carl's been working his butt off, setting up a whole bunch of build plans for us. So we are about as organized as we've ever been, thanks to Carl. And Carl, what do we have for the comment of the week?
This week, our comment of the week gets a developer small business license for Espose.total for .NET, which includes all of the Espose.NET products in one package. And we got an email from Jared. Jared Goodwin, looking down at the bottom of his email. He says, first of all, I love it. It has the perfect amount of interesting topics and technical depth. I'm a self-taught application developer and am stuck at a help desk job that I hate and had originally promoted out of 5 years ago. Now there's a hiring freeze and things are looking even more grim. All this leads up to the biggest project I've worked on to date. It's a suite of tools for remote tech support called InstaTech. It has remote control application, live chat support, and workstation management features. The remote control is similar to TeamViewer. It's all open source, and I'd love feedback. So please share this with anyone you think who might be interested. Well, we're interested, and if you want to check it out, it's at instatech.org, and there's also a GitHub repo for all the different code. He's got a bunch of different stuff there, and he's also available at translucency.info.
Okay. Yeah, no, hopefully Jared doesn't get mad at me for making this comment, but I don't really care like what the actual project is. The reason that I picked this as the comment of the week is that I really like his approach here. He sort of got stuck in this job where he's not doing what he wants to do, but he's turning that into an opportunity to do what he wants to do, right? So he's using the problem set of things that he's running into, and he's doing what he's passionate about, which is writing code. And he's actually writing some really awesome code. Like I went through some of the code in the GitHub repos, and it's really impressive what he's doing because he has to do all this real-time, low-level socket code in .NET. But again, I don't even think it matters like what he's actually writing. But the fact that he is again forcing himself to do this, I think, is a big deal. And it might not seem like a big deal to some people, but I've talked to way too many people where they're stuck in a job like this. They're stuck in, they're in this dead end job that's not what they want to do, and all they do is they just sit there and complain about it, and they want this company, this, like Prince in Shining Armor to come in and like rescue them and then like teach them what they need to know. And that doesn't always happen. I mean, we are in a market right now where there's a potential for that, but just kind of sitting back waiting for somebody to do that, it's not a good approach. So I just really like that he took the reins into his own hands, and he's actually making something for himself here.
This is fantastic. I mean, and it's even from the perspective that, I'm talking as myself as a recent, fairly recent, I guess, college grad, 3 years now. I guess it's not recent anymore, but the idea where it's like we look at your ability to kind of learn and get out of that, like, the box thinking of here's what I do and this is it. Like we
Yeah.
recently interviewed for a bunch of interns, and this is exactly kind of the thing that I'm looking for of
Ding,
how
ding,
are
ding,
you
ding, ding.
able to learn, right? Like I don't
Hmm.
necessarily care about you being able to put together, a specific algorithm, but it's more of how will you get to the solution, right?
Hmm.
Like this is what matters. It's fantastic to see, you're not limiting yourself to the job. You're going like out of your way to build something, to learn something, because ultimately that's what's going to help you.
Yep, exactly. So I've talked to a lot of college hires recently, and I actually interviewed a whole bunch of fairly senior people, and it was interesting because they're like, yeah, this, they're like, they were hiring for a certain position, and like, this is what I want to be doing, and it's like, and I would say, okay, like, where's your code? Show me your GitHub repo. What have you been writing? And well, probably more than half are like, oh, I don't have anything. I haven't written anything, and it's like, this is what you want to do, and you're making zero attempt to do it at this point. So it's if you want to put yourself in that top 25%, like just do something. If you were in college right now and you were taking classes for this, like check your code into GitHub so that you have evidence of that. And if you have an idea for it, just build one thing, at least just one thing, put a little bit of time and energy into it. And then you can walk in and say, I built this and this is what I want to keep doing. And
Mm-hmm.
you'll be at the top of the list. And it's like, it's such a low bar in my opinion, but that's the way it is these days.
Yeah, and I mean, I totally agree with you. You are building your personal brand, right? Like you're
Mm-hmm.
no longer in the silo of I'll get to the interview and I'll draw stuff out on the whiteboard and that's it. I'm
Yeah.
gonna get the job. It's like you're getting to the job through the years as you're working. You're in college, you're working somewhere else. You're building that portfolio, you're building out your resume, you're building that knowledge that you can ultimately apply to something.
Mm-hmm.
Like we're no longer in the age of, hey, here's the problem, solved it, great. That we're just gonna take your word for it.
Yeah.
Because the fact that you have a GitHub repo, the fact that you have, a good amount of contributions there, it shows your passion, right?
Yeah.
Your passion for
Exactly.
doing things. Like this is something that you actually care about. This is something that you want to do and be good at.
Mm-hmm. It seems so obvious and so simple. It's kind of sad that we even have to say it, but yeah. So good job, Jared. I think you're doing the right thing. The other thing I'd say to Jared is that there are so many companies out there that I talk to so many companies that are like, we can't find good talent, we can't find enough people. It really is a good market right now. So if there's obviously like sometimes geography constraints or things like that, but there are tons of companies that would love to have you based on the code that you're writing. There's no doubt in my mind. So send us another comment in I don't know, how long should we give them, 2 months, and let us know what new job you've gotten. That's the goal I'm setting, or at least like an accepted offer or something. So we'll hear again from Jared in 2 months.
So if you want to get mentioned on the show like Jared, send us an email to feedback@msdevshow.com, comment on Facebook, YouTube, or Stitcher. And also remember, we have a new Slack channel, so you can sign up for that at slack.msdevshow.com.
Yeah, we got some really cool people in there, by the way. Really big fans, good conversation going. So super
You guys
excited.
have a Slack?
Yeah.
You guys are up with the times. I love it.
We waited way longer than we should have, but yeah. So now we're up with the times. We sort of learned a lesson because we created a Facebook page, and I don't know, it's kind of I was going to use some bad words. It's totally our fault. You just don't want to spread yourself too thin on like trying to be in all these different places. So the whole Facebook thing, we've tried to like, we want to shut it down. So anytime we take on something new, we want to make sure that we can stay committed to it. So that's what's made us kind of slow to adopt new things. So that's a little inside baseball there. Okay, so what do we got for the news, Carl? Alphabet's self-driving cars to get their first real riders.
Yeah, I think this one's really interesting because this is really the first time you have a self-driving car of any kind having people from the public. It sounds like they're going to be having. Am I silencing here? All right, I'll just talk through it.
Yeah, it just cuts out every once in a while, but you're fine.
All right. Yeah, they're having a service where people can get into 500 customized Chrysler Pacificas and use them in the, I believe, Phoenix area
Hmm.
and be able to try them out. So it'll be interesting to see how people's expectations and real world scenarios change. What we've all seen and heard from journalists and employees who have had a chance to use these kind of vehicles.
Yeah. So it's
Isn't that
funny.
what?
Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, isn't that what Uber did a while ago with the self-driving car tests? I think that they did it somewhere on the East Coast.
Well, they've done it in like parking lots. I don't know. I don't know what. I haven't really been keeping track about who's been doing what to like kind of in the real world, because the laws are
Interesting.
obviously way behind.
Right,
So
right, and especially with the number of crashes and everything.
yeah. Well, what's interesting, so they have a video here, and I watch it, and it just kills me because they show I've had kind of mixed feelings on the whole self-driving thing. Like in the end, I know that it will save lives, and that's where we're going to get to. It's a great thing, that everything being told. But I always bring up some issues that I think are going to be kind of bumps along the way, and they actually bring up in this video. They show basically the trolley problem that we've talked about before, where the
Mm-hmm.
car has to make a decision between like hitting one person or another, and they actually show a scenario where there's, I think it's a pedestrian and like another car, and they just said, "Oh, cars will have to deal with this," and then they just move on, and they're like, "Okay, I guess we're just completely glazing over this now. We just ignore this issue."
There's an
So that's the
interesting
answer.
totally tangential to that. MIT
Yeah.
has built a web app where you can go and they'll run through a set of these kind of examples of, oh,
Oh, it's like a
here's a
survey.
car. Yeah, so here's a car. They actually show you like there are pictures of like here's a car and here's,
Oh, wow.
a pedestrian, an old woman, a dog, and there's a kid, and then like they shuffle that around.
Yeah.
And so it asks you to select, like would you pick, an all-star athlete versus a like somebody that's 85 years old?
Oh my God,
And
that's
then
horrible.
at the end, like after it gives you, I think like 20 or 25 questions like that, it tells you how biased you are towards specific groups. And,
Yeah.
it's an interesting problem. Definitely, like there's so much ethical implication in that,
Yeah.
where it shows you like there's no single person that has the same opinion as somebody else.
Right.
How do you put that in code?
Yeah, so do we average all of those together and just tell the machines that, there's like a score? And the problem is going to be at some point they're going to have to assign scores, and then that's going to like get out. Like Chrysler, cuz and then what if they have different scores based on the brand? Like Chrysler, hates kids, but they like athletes, more than Ford does or something.
It's a
This is going to be really
marketing
weird.
campaign you don't want to be a part of.
Yeah, because you're going to have like this what would you call it? It'd be a quotient of expendability or something. Your expendability quotient.
I'm excited about self-driving cars, don't get me wrong, but like
Yeah, yeah,
these are the kind of decisions where it's like, yeah, it's not a kind of it's not a binary choice.
yeah. So to kind of keep it positive. So I like that there's a whole bunch of testing going on. This is great. I mean, this is clearly progress. Things are getting better, and we're on that path to a world where, the traffic becomes pretty much a non-issue, and we save a million lives every year. Any other comments? Move on. Okay, a visual lexicon of link.
Link is obviously one of the awesomest features of .NET. I think most of us will agree with that. But there's a
Mm-hmm.
lot of nuances with it as well. Some of the things that are really cool about it are things like that. A lot of it is lazy, but sometimes it's hard to remember like which operators are lazy, which one will do immediate execution, which ones are deferred. And we got a cool chart here if you go to the show notes that'll show you for every different operator in Link what it all can do, even like its big O notation, optional features of it, whether you can have like custom compares passed in or not. It's really cool to not only just see what these are, but there's also a few visualizations as well to help you see what these all do.
Did you see how they did the visualizations?
Yes, they used Ozcode.
Yes, from episode. How did we figure out our episode number?
Not last week.
87. Episode 87. Well, I'm like on the page and I'm like, wait a second, we don't show the episode number because it's, it's just a number, right? But yeah, episode 87. So if you search for MS Dev Show and Ozcode, this is really cool. Like if I would have had, not to like pitch Ozcode, but like the visualizations are super helpful, especially whenever you get into like ToDictionary and some of these other things that are sort of hard to visualize. They actually show how it takes and the group by. The group by was the one that always threw me off. It actually shows how the things get grouped and what the output is. Man, I would have been such a better developer had I been using these tools whenever I started doing link stuff.
Such a surprisingly polished product. Now I'm looking at it.
So we're going to have 3 different links.
No, I was going to say, it looks like such a polished product. I'm just looking at the screenshots and wow,
Isn't it cool?
I want this in Visual Studio right now.
Yeah, this is like the best tool that you're not using today that you probably didn't even hear of.
It's Oz-Code if you search for it on their URL. It's really awesome.
Yeah, I mean, they'll probably be at Build too, so they're usually there every year. I always go and talk to them for a while because they always have something new to show off.
Yeah, this is extremely helpful. I got so lazy with like Link and ReSharper that it tells you like, here's what the expression you need to use. Like, great. I'm just gonna plug it in. I have no idea what the impact is.
Yeah, I trust you.
I need this. Yeah, I grew to trust ReSharper, and now this is great.
But in any case, Carl's dead on. Like this is just incredible. This is just a cool way of, it has all the information about these different operations. And actually, you had, like you mentioned earlier, Carl, you have a couple different links in here. Links, I guess I'll call them, with good link information in those links. Too many links. Okay, should we move on? Why my handwriting sucks. I know why mine sucks. Go ahead, Carl. Can you hear us, Carl?
So this guy kind of like wrote the Quick Brown Fox sentence, and he has obviously not the best handwriting. And what this article does is he kind of uses like what we look for in typography, X height, cap heights, baseline, all the stuff that normal developers don't think of, but like maybe designers and web developers do, the front end devs. Mm-hmm. And he kind of like used all of those to kind of pick apart the flaws in his handwriting and use those to improve what his handwriting is. Now, granted, if you just look at the end result, you're like, yeah, that might not be the nicest handwriting. But when you look at it to how it started, it's definitely a little bit cleaner and more legible. So I think it's cool when we take some of the stuff that we internalize as part of our day jobs and writing code and find ways to improve things that maybe aren't technology related. Yeah,
it's basically a science-based approach to improving your handwriting.
I would love to have an application of that, to be honest. From my own experience, I've moved to the US in 2008, and one of the things that shocked me is you guys write in
you guys? Yeah.
No, wow, you just had to go there.
No, where did you move from?
I originally moved from Moldova, which is a country in Eastern Europe. But when I moved to America, what I've noticed is American children in schools, they are taught to write in like print, and we were taught to write in script.
Yeah, it was cursive.
And whenever I would write in like script, like nobody knew what I wrote. Like looking at the letters and stuff, it was impossible. Like, how do I even read this? So I had to learn how to, if there would be a scientific approach for me at the time to say, convert this to print, and I can then fake write a program that just prints out, kind of pseudo handwriting that looks like my American counterparts, that'd be fantastic. It's great to see that somebody's doing progress on that because somebody will definitely need that.
Yeah. Well, what's interesting too, so they were when I was a kid, they taught cursive in schools, and I know a lot of schools are getting rid of that now, which is interesting because I kind of read it without thinking about it. So I could be wrong here, but my understanding is too, if you haven't learned cursive, then it's kind of hard to read. If you've only had, learned regular printing, it's kind of hard for me to like imagine that at this point, but I think that's the case.
At least around here, the schools that have dropped it have started reteaching it again.
Oh, really?
Yes.
Was it because of the backlash or?
Well, I think that there are some, like you said, some definite benefits. I mean, you're going to encounter people writing script out there, and if you can't read it, that's going to hold you back.
Yeah.
I think tangentially on that, there's also a whole subreddit dedicated to people being awesome when it comes to penmanship. Like these incredible
Yeah.
handwriting notes and like the letters the way it's like, wow,
Or in calligraphy. Yeah, some
yes,
people do
yeah,
like the
yeah.
calligraphy and
But it's not even like the thing about like calligraphy. You think of somebody specifically, designing letters for. This is like they write it on a daily basis. That's how they write. It's incredible. It is.
I don't have time for that. Okay. Programming languages used late at night.
Yeah, so this is yet another Stack Overflow insight from their data team. And what they did is they kind of compared what is the traffic differences on their tags, their programming languages by the hour that it's used. And they kind of graphed that out. So you can see that there's a large spike on some that are like right before or right after lunch. There's some that trend up at nighttime after hours. And there's some, obviously what they're trying to do is what do our developers kind of quote forced to do at work during the day, and what did they do at night for fun?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this was pretty cool. So I think a lot of these insights were in the big survey that we covered, but there's some in here that I think are interesting. T-SQL used during the day. You can imagine here T-SQL, SharePoint, PowerShell. Some of those, used during the day, but not really used at night. And then on the other end of the spectrum, you got Haskell, Assembly, OpenGL, Firebase, Algorithm. Is Algorithm a language?
Assembly made the list?
Yeah.
Shocking.
People go home and they're like, you know what?
I had too much fun at work.
Too much fun with C#
right now. Yeah.
I just want to crack out some assembly code. To each his own, I guess. So I don't know. This is like kind of an exhaustive report, so I don't want to go through the whole thing, but it is interesting. And I wonder like what the effect is of, how much pull do these people have? When I say, I mean developers, like, you go home and you're writing Haskell, for example. Like, does that start to translate into like Haskell in your day projects? Because you could imagine that, you go into work and some jobs are flexible. It's like, we don't care what you write it in. So you start writing in Haskell, and then it's like, oh, we need to hire a Haskell person for our team because the rest of us all know Haskell, and that's what we're writing it in. And then it sort of starts to grow organically out of that and become a popular language. Maybe Haskell isn't the best example, but
I mean, it happened to me with Node. Like, I have
never that's a good example.
Node before. Like, for my job, I'm technically like not required to write any Node code. Yeah. But what I used to start, what was it? The Ghost blog. So they wrote their stuff entirely in Node. So I was like, you know what? I want to extend this, and I need to know Node for that.
Yep.
So I kind of like after work started picking it up, but then it translated as like, oh, okay, I'm writing bots for our content automation, and that's entirely Node because now I know how to use Node. So I think you're absolutely right. It does translate to kind of you pick it up as a hobby, and then I know how to do this better in this language, and then you just take it to work.
And then, so today's hobby language is like tomorrow's production language. At least it's, I'm sure there's some kind of causation there.
Hey, TypeScript, right?
Yeah.
Like it started as one of those things that is, kind of a, hey, here's this fun project that we've built. And now look at how many sites use TypeScript.
Oh, we missed that in the news. Thank you for bringing that up. TypeScript 2.3 was just released. There's some cool stuff in there that I won't go over, but we'll include a link to that in the show notes. But they're just killing it over there. They're doing some really great stuff. Okay, so let's talk about docs because that's why we are here. So, I think Microsoft has gone through a couple different iterations for documentation. Just because there's it's been years and years and years and years, and this is always kind of a tough nut to crack. And the world changes and requirements change and that type of thing. So I guess we'll kind of start from like really where we're at today. Like, why did Microsoft create a new spot for documentation? I think it's docs.microsoft.com, correct?
You're absolutely correct. Yeah.
Okay, so why does that exist?
Why does it exist? Well, I think there was a tweet along the lines from our friend of the pod, Miguel de Icaza, that mentioned, if there would be one investment for the future, in terms of like code and software, it would be writing documentation. I think our team is specifically passionate about that. We know that, for a product to be successful, you need docs. You need good docs. From your experience, knowing that as you get started with something like with a product, probably a doc would be your first endpoint, right, that you would encounter and decide whether you want to use it or not. So previously, we had a very, very fragmented experience, right? We had the Azure documentation side, we had TechNet, we had MSDN, we had .NET stuff hosted on Read-to-Docs, we had ASP.NET stuff hosted on Read-to-Docs, we had EF stuff hosted on Read-to-Docs. So there's a lot of places where you don't have, one, a consistent experience. So if certain features are being deployed to one site, others don't get it. And it's not like other teams don't need it. So things like, for example, PDF download, super useful. You can't really enable it easily. So all those kind of issues piled up to the point where we realize that we need something that consolidates it. It's one single place. We send people there. You can find any documentation from Microsoft, any technical documentation in one place. You can find all the great features that we ship. They're available across the board. So when it comes to PDF downloads, offline books, they're all available. It's so much easier, more efficient, keeps people satisfied with their experience, because now when they learn about any Microsoft product, be it Windows, Azure, .NET, Visual Studio, they just go to one place and it's all integrated together. They're all intertwined. So you no longer have to, hey, if I want to use Visual Studio with Azure, I run two sites. You just run one and everything is right there. It's right in front of you.
Oh, that's a good point. Yeah, because of the linking between the two, of course. That makes a lot of sense.
And I think it's one of the things also we constantly grow, right? We release new products, we release new frameworks, SDK, tools. All that needs to go somewhere. And if we just recommend people just go and spin up your own site, go and create your own documentation, they don't have necessarily the tooling, they don't have the expertise, they don't have the time and resources. I mean, if you go to any team and say, spend this time on building tooling when this tooling already exists, probably not the best investment from their time. We are entirely focused on building out that tooling, building out that experience that is consistent, so teams can worry about products. We will enable you to build great documentation.
So what kind of new features are available on docs.microsoft.com that kind of didn't exist anymore on the multitude of places where we had documentation?
Yeah, so one of the things that we released fairly recently for if you look for Azure PowerShell documentation, we've introduced now clear version selection, right? So if you use certain modules, you know exactly what version you're talking about. You no longer have to guess about, hey, is this the recent one? Is this the latest? Is this something that I need to go down? That was
always a problem.
Yeah, so you always see that. So that's one. The other one is grouping of them per service. So you no longer have to guess, you're using Azure Notification Hubs. You know exactly what's available in Notification Hubs. You don't have to kind of parse the side and try to figure out is this module available there? Is this not? Is this in the right version? Is this not in the right version? It's right there in the table of contents. Other things like the .NET API browser we released just 20 days ago or so, which allows you to find any Microsoft .NET based API in one place. If you go to docs.microsoft.com/.NET/API, we onboarded Azure, we onboarded all of .NET platform, we have Xamarin, iOS, Xamarin Mac, Xamarin Android. It's all there. So if you type in something like string, we'll point you to the right places from one place. And again, back to my earlier point where the problem previously was you don't know for what version, for what framework, where to go. You know where to go now. And this is kind of our goal, is to consolidate all managed APIs or all .NET based APIs in this one place. So you can imagine that at some point, any managed SDK that ships from Microsoft, you will be able to find the API information there. Other things that we're doing is in terms of sample validation, right? So what's kind of the big problem with samples? There's a lot of them. There's a lot of different places that, again, GitHub, there's the code gallery, there's the Visual Studio, all these fragmented experiences are being consolidated into one. So you'll be able to find samples all in one place. We're also running all of the samples through a CI pipeline. So now actually all of your samples are validated, and you know that once you're downloading them, they will work. They will work in your configuration. The way we've done this is a very interesting system where we containerize the process. So once, for example, if you build on top of .NET Core, we have a container that's being spin up, like either a Docker container or you can use a Windows container, where inside that container the code runs. So if something breaks, the dev can get the container itself, and they know what exactly broke. So you no longer run into the issue of, well, it works on my machine. It's like, well, here's a container.
Yeah.
You can diagnose
your machine is a container.
Exactly. So you can now look at the container and say, well, what went wrong? And like, is there a misconfiguration? Do I reference the wrong NuGet package? Do I reference the wrong version of the NuGet package? All that kind of stuff. We've also optimized a lot of the, the ingestion pipeline for the NuGet packages. So now we can easily document any NuGet package that ships in this managed experience. We have organized our Azure content better. We have offline downloads. We have just released the new offline books for Visual Studio 2017 that are now, previously, if you would have to, if you use the help viewer, which I know a lot of people don't use, but it's still a tool and still great. If you use the help viewer, previously for books, you would have to wait months for updates to happen. Now that happens within hours. We've completely rebuilt the entire system that builds them. And they rely on, again, the open docs. So if you have contributions to your docs, so as you know, our docs are open. They're all on GitHub. You can just edit. If you edit any doc and your contribution is being accepted, and that doc is part of one of the offline books that ships with like Visual Studio, your contribution will make it there. So all the users that will use Visual Studio that will have that book installed, they'll have your content in it.
That's very cool.
So we are so community oriented. We love our community. We love contributions. We want the community to be feel very comfortable contributing to documentation. Like, this is no longer a process where previously, if I would ask you, how would you fix a typo on MSDN? Right? Like, what was the process?
I'd have to email Dan and say,
okay. All right.
That was my approach too.
Yeah. So you no longer do that. You just go and open a pull request and say, here's a typo, or hey, I have a better screenshot for you guys. That's it. Like, we review it, and within hours, minutes, that's live. That's on the live side for that document. Like, we want to empower people to build great docs and improve them as they go. So we certainly can document as many scenarios as we can imagine, but there are certain scenarios that we do not have maybe the necessary expertise on. If somebody decides to write a how to use bot framework with Node.js, right? Maybe we don't have an article for it. They can just do it themselves and write a tutorial and get the instant exposure of, like, this is an official Microsoft site that has your content on it. It's fantastic. And I mean, we've seen a lot of traction for that. We're also very keen on getting like feedback. So we're very reactive to what users need. One of the things previously, again, like with side issues with any new requests for side features, it's very complicated to say, well, if I want, one of the recent issues, again, was the problem with, on our .NET reference, we did not show derived classes for certain things. We had a user that simply created an issue in user voice. That issue got voted up, and we said, great, there's a traction behind this. We need to implement this. We implemented it, done. Right? Like, you've never seen that previously for MSDN and TechNet. This is fantastic, and we want the community to see that, your feedback matters, and we act on that feedback. You're the ones using the docs. We want to make docs awesome for you.
Aspose offers a powerful set of file management APIs with which developers can create applications, which can create, open, edit, and save the majority of popular business file formats. Their product range supports a multitude of file formats, including Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, PowerPoint presentations, PDF documents, OneNote, Outlook, Project, Visio files, popular image formats, and many others. Aspose produces APIs for .NET, Java in the cloud, which can be utilized in almost any modern language available today. Visit www.aspose.com for a free 30-day no limitations trial. And if you get stuck, message the friendly support team for help. All technical support is offered free of charge. Remember, if you're a lucky winner, you will receive a free developer small business license for aspose.words for .NET, a powerful toolkit to work with Word documents in your applications.
So, technical question, because you mentioned samples being auto-compiled. Does that include like the snippets that are in the documentation, or is that what you're calling a sample?
That's a good question. We actually kind of standardize, and we're moving towards the standard of snippets in the docs. They're no longer kind of standalone text entries. We just don't copy paste code into our doc files. what we do is we have what's called code includes. So there's a markdown extension that essentially says, from this folder, you have a dependent repository that you set up. So as I mentioned earlier, we have the docs repo that has all the content in markdown format or any structured format. In addition to that, next there can be a sample repo. So you add it as a dependent repository, like as a Git module, if you will. And at build time, we download it and we allow writers or whoever references the content say, from this code file, give me anything between the line 3 and line 15, and that it gets embedded in the doc. Right. Yeah. So and that way you have a validated sample. And at the same time, you know that in the content, you always get the code that's from the sample and not something that gets out of date. So for example, say you're building something with Bot Framework, you have a code sample that does it. And Bot Framework evolves fairly fast. And you can't just embed a piece of text and then hope that, 2 months later, that's going to be the same. Because the sample might change, the method they called might change, the class, the namespace might change. That gets automatically updated at the build time for the content as the sample updates. So you no longer have to even touch the content.
So I'm a little slow, so I want you to walk me through this. I'm looking at, you had mentioned language reference for string earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So I went there and I noticed that the spacing is really weird. So there's some in the code sections. Mm-hmm. There's actually an extra line in there that I don't think goes through. Yep. But before the first line of some of these, there's like extra spaces in there. Mm-hmm. I assume that isn't intentional, so I'm actually editing it right now.
Yeah. Fantastic. Well, we had another community contribution. Great.
Yeah. But I wanted to make sure too that code, what does it actually look like if the sample is if that's coming from somewhere else? Because all I see is the markdown, right?
So all you see is the sample being rendered on the site. We are actually working on improving that experience to have you kind of a more contextual way to go to know where that sample came from. It's not there today, but like I said, it's a lot of work in progress. We are iterating on a lot of these features. Yeah, it's coming.
Okay, I'm about to send you a pull request here.
I see exactly what you're talking about, Jason. That looks goofy.
Yeah, so I'm fixing it right now.
I think it's another part, because the .NET reference, it's we just moved it literally like 2 or 3 weeks ago. So there, I'm not surprised there's artifacts.
Okay.
This is great that we can fix that. Yeah.
Yeah. Create pull request. So I just pushed it. There you go. Pull request 2051.
2051. All right.
So does so when we're talking about like this validation of these code things, like if we update to a newer version of .NET or a new version of whatever, and something breaks at that point, that I'm assuming that for all the previous versions, that code sample will stay still, but we can fix it just for that one version.
Right. So you get a report that says, as we run our CI jobs, they run across what's called a matrix. So you have, .NET, we get the exact supported frameworks that the team wants to support. For example, .NET Framework 4.0, 4.5, 4.6.2, like anything like that. And then we run the sample across the matrix and we see where it breaks, where it doesn't. And the team is more than, welcome to say that, we don't really care about supporting .NET Framework 4.0, but we do care that 4.5 is our kind of like the lower baseline. So in this case, they can easily say, look, if it breaks on 4.0, that's expected. Like we've introduced an API that doesn't just work in 4.0. But they are always aware of kind of what the status is across the board. So it's not just the latest, but it's also like across the supported spectrum.
And then are you creating all those Docker containers and doing all those tests in parallel?
So yes, the CI job right now, the way it runs,
it's got to be massive, right? Like, do you have any numbers or specs on that?
We have specs. I don't have numbers off the top of my head, but we do run a good amount of parallel CI jobs. I have not looked at my Azure bill, so my manager will see this at some point and we'll check. So yeah,
we're creating 10 billion containers, and I don't know what it costs.
Yeah, no, we do have limits, like spending limits, obviously set up in terms of
No, I know.
Another thing that kind of interesting to think, and this is we've done. We are very considerate of resources, so we know when something is getting used way too much, and like for example, if VM is all of a sudden active for an hour when it typically ran for 10 minutes, we can easily shut that down.
Okay.
So the way it's not just spinning. Like if something happened and it's in a weird state, that gets shut down.
Okay. And then you guys have done such great work. And I know like within Microsoft, if you say, hey, we have this new product and we want documentation, obviously they can go to you and, you know, you say, this is how you onboard. But like, is this something that, you know, a different company could use? Or, I mean, if not, are there any plans to do that?
Yeah, good question also. If you
Yeah.
go to our user voice, which is msdocs@uservoice.com.
Is that like the number one request?
The number one request is make the system open source. I think there are several considerations that go into that. And the main reason why we don't have it as open source today is there's a lot of moving parts. A lot of moving parts in terms of, you know, the big chunk of the system is open source, is docfx. So I think it's docfx.github.io. I might be wrong on the URL, but we can share it after the show.
It says .net.github.io/docfx.
Yeah, correct. You're absolutely right. So that's docfx. Docfx is our kind of the at the core of the infrastructure. Around it, we build what's called the open publishing system, which contains a lot of different plugins for a lot of different system languages. We have documentation that is not just .NET. So if you look at docfx, it's designed for .NET, but we have things like Java, Python, Node, REST. Just recently, we moved to the Xamarin Format for Managed Reference, which is ECMA XML. There's a lot of these plugins that need to play well together, for us to have this kind of consistent experience. So it's not yet at a level of being productized, if you will. So to package this as an open source project would take some amount of work, some good amount of work that we are, I think we're not ready yet. Definitely, the team is aware, like this has been brought up many, many times. Definitely a lot of value in it. I can't give you like any timelines or any promise of it, but it's definitely been on the radar many times.
Well, I think our listeners realize that like the amount of effort it takes to like productize something is usually like equivalent to just creating it. So it's always a huge undertaking.
And I mean, there's a lot of considerations, right? Because the moment you productize it, this means that it has to be maintained in a way that is good for the community, in a way that it's, you know, we can accept community contributions. We can integrate community code into the product and then ship the product. There's a lot of, like I said, a lot of moving parts. I would say do go to user voice and vote it up. The more you vote it up, the more we see it. And, you know, if there's enough, you know, weight behind the idea, like that's definitely something we can consider.
Okay. And then I'm just wondering, like the list of technologies that Microsoft has, you know, are they all in docs now, or is there like, you know, a list that we're kind of working on getting them migrated over? What's that look like?
So we certainly have kind of a priority list of what will come to docs. Ideally, and long term, this is something where every single technical doc from Microsoft that is intended for public consumption will be on docs, which implies kind of retiring of MSDN, retiring of like TechNet. We're not there yet. So I wouldn't say that every single Microsoft product is on docs. The big ones are. So things like Azure, things like Windows, things like Visual Studio, .NET, they're already on docs. There is more work involved in migrating content over to make sure that we account for a lot of things such as, you know, the number one thing that we need to consider is broken links, right? If I go to an old site, now I need to redirect. Somebody has to do that work. We also standardize a markdown. So somebody, you know, if you use one of the older systems that used some specific markup that was very designed for that system that our system doesn't support, we need to implement kind of the transition model for that, the migration. And there's a lot of work involved with that. So not everybody's there yet, but the goal is to get them here.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, you were talking about, you know, transitioning things, but before, when Jason mentioned that he was looking at that string documentation, I was doing a search, and the first like 4 or 5 links were all msdn.microsoft.com/something about string.
Yeah.
So you know we have a lot of duplicate content. You know, what is the what are you planning to take care of that?
Right. So the problem with the content that you see today, and the reason for that is because of how recent the migration is, we are keeping both copies live at the same time, both MSDN and the docs version of the .NET reference, to make sure that there's no content loss. So we essentially compare both sites and see, are all the samples moved over? Is all the information on different types moved over? Once that's done, we'll set up the proper redirects. So once you go to, like, if somebody bookmarked MSDN links, they will go to the docs. That'll eventually also translate to the fact that Google only indexes one page. You will no longer, search for string and end up for a version of string that was designed for Windows Mobile 5.0. It's going to be exactly the string for the latest version of Framework.
That'll be nice.
Yeah, and it's just kind of the work that we've done in terms of standardizing on a format for string. You just have one string page. We just use one canonical URL. It's .NET/API/system string. There's no weird like MSDN IDs that you see right now in the URL. Like, all of that will be redirected. So essentially, we will get there in the coming months as we validate our content. So all .NET content, all MSDN will be sunsetted, all MSDN reference content for .NET, and instead of it, you'll always get to docs.
Okay.
And also, we set no index, no follow right now for the docs content for .NET, the reference. So don't be surprised if you don't find it yet. It's going to get there.
Oh, okay. That makes sense. And then can I like download the entire site and get it offline? Is there a way to do that?
So there's offline books, so you can do it through Visual Studio. We also have the ability to download PDFs, so you can go on many pages across docs and download the PDF and see what you get. We've enabled that for several of our large doc sets like UWP. You can download the entire reference for Azure,
That's cool.
for .NET. There are still kind of bugs in the PDF process, some along the lines where you might see some blank pages.
Yeah, it's on the left, like on the bottom there, download PDF.
Yep, under table of contents. And this is your way to kind of get the latest and greatest offline content. So the PDFs are generated the moment the content is updated. So if you have a new community contribution, somebody added a new article, we will regenerate the PDF, and you'll get the new PDF. And this is where nobody manually maintains them. It's all an automated process, and it's all entirely kind of driven by the content that's on the site. So the PDF will always reflect what's on the site.
So looking at some of these, I see that in the bottom there's comments, and people ask questions and people are answering them. So do all of these comments actually get read by someone? Does it like raise flags somewhere?
Oh yeah, no. This is the comments that you see on docs. They're actually being delivered directly to our writers that own specific pieces of content. So if somebody finds an issue and say they don't feel like issuing a PR, they can just leave a comment and say, hey, by the way, your screenshot's out of date. It shows kind of the wrong version of iOS. And then the writer will see that and they'll come in, great. They'll usually respond and say, I updated this, or it's in the queue to be updated. It's very, very efficient in terms of getting community feedback for those that don't want to, not everybody has a GitHub account. Not everybody wants to deal with GitHub or doesn't have experience with pull requests with, Git and whatnot. That's great. You don't have to. Just leave a comment.
Okay, very cool. I always wondered if they were just going into like nowhere, into the abyss,
That's one of the things that we try to avoid. This was the case with MSDN, where you would have a bunch of comments and they just sit on the site. It's no longer the case because we're actually addressing all the comments. We're looking at them and we're trying to get better at it.
Very cool. I also like that you guys have the dark theme available, but Carl was wondering if there's a hot pink theme coming.
Hot pink. So here's a little like trivia fact for you guys. I would love a Barbie theme myself. At the time when we were just designing the site, when this the first mocks for the new docs experience came out, we had this option. So you had the light theme, the dark theme. Do any of you remember Hot Dog in Windows?
Yeah.
So we had a hot dog theme where it's like all red and yellow. That was there. So, if they're the kind of, obviously nobody wanted to maintain it. And it's like you should not.
Everybody go to user voice.
Yeah.
Ask for the hot dog theme.
We just default everybody into hot dog. That's it.
Yeah.
But
there's such demand.
Yeah, so we had the option for hot dog, and it was there. I don't think it ever shipped live. So but this is kind of your random fact of the day. The dark theme is, I personally myself switch every single piece of software that I can on my computer to dark theme. Visual Studio, Outlook,
Yep.
VS Code, Atom, like all those things is always dark theme. So I'm
Yep.
an avid user of the dark theme for docs myself. Um, Gotta warn you, there in some cases there are some bugs in terms of like images being, not rendering properly in the dark theme because they did not account for it. But again, those are the kind of issues that we would love to address, and we encourage people to, as you see those, use the comments, use user voice to tell us, and we'll be more than happy to fix it. I love the dark theme. I love the fact that you brought it up. I can rave about it for hours. The dark theme is.
No, I totally agree. It throws me off when somebody doesn't have the dark theme. I'm like looking at the computer. I'm like,
My eyes,
it
yeah,
burns
exactly.
my eyes, yeah.
I walked into the surgical room. It's not, yeah, it makes it. I don't know why, but it's kind of again, it's more of a personal opinion. But I understand content better if I read it in a dark theme. Like it's less distracting for some reason.
Yeah. My only annoy this is totally off topic, but Outlook, the reading pane for the mails is still
Yeah.
is still white.
Right.
What the heck? Like, can't you invert it or something? I don't know. I'm guessing it looks bad in like 10% of situations, and that's why they don't do it.
Yeah.
But I wish I could read my email.
Another
in dark
horrendous
theme.
one. If we have anybody working for Slack here, we can customize the entire theme except for the reading window. They need to fix that.
Yeah. So MS Teams they're kicking ass. They got dark theme and it looks great.
And I think that's also for oh yeah, no, I love Teams for that.
Yeah.
The one thing with Outlook, and I'm obviously just speculating, you're technically rendering like HTML content, right?
Yeah.
And, like you can't just arbitrarily decide to like swap the colors or anything like that because
Yeah, you're right. It's our operating system, our application, and our rendering engine. But I'm just
yeah, right. It's like if only there was some.
But our hands are tied, right?
Right. That's
No,
right.
I know.
It.
The fact that it is white, I'm guessing that yeah, I'm guessing that's why. Like they just use the rendering engine. It was probably a huge hassle to do it the other way, and then it's probably not even that great of an experience because yeah, you get images and like stuff. Just emails are expecting a white background, unfortunately.
Right,
So-
right. Exactly. And I think there's some level of kind of user baseline. I'm sure they've done their studies and whatnot. They've determined that look like 99% of people use a certain way. If you
Yeah.
break that, you don't want to anger people that use Outlook. Trust me. I've worked on
Yeah.
Outlook.
Yeah, there should be an option for, there should be like a checkbox for it and it just says experimental or do not use or something. I'll just check it.
It's like sign off. Like I totally agree to have a degraded experience if something happens.
Yeah, exactly. This will cause pain.
All right. Is there anything else you can tell us about what's coming up next for the doc site?
There's a lot coming. There's not a lot I can talk about.
All right. So maybe in about 2 weeks time frame?
I'd say stay tuned for large Microsoft events. If anything, there's a lot of, like I said, we are iterating on so many parts of our docs experience. I'm very, very excited for what the team has done. There's obviously more content coming on boarding. Like just yesterday, I think we went live with Bot Framework. So all Bot Framework documentation is now on docs. So more content is coming. Definitely more features, and if there's something that we are missing or which can be better or which needs to be removed, I don't know if that exists, but people are very passionate about certain things. Tell us. I mean, this is something where a lot of people think about giving feedback online as a black hole, where it's like I just give this and it just disappears into the void.
Mm-hmm.
We're not that kind of team. Like all of the feedback that we get is actually being sent out to the team. We're triaging all your feedback. We see the user voice items. Like if people report things like, hey, I go to this MSDN page and it redirects me to docs, but now at 404s, we fix that. And we fix that within like hours. This is not something that we are taking lightly. So do give us feedback. This is your opportunity to make the docs better, and this is the time.
Okay. Anything you wanted to talk about that we skipped? You think we covered everything?
I would really encourage people to, try out our docs experience, the new docs experience. I would encourage people to follow our Twitter account at docsmsft. This is another channel that we're very active in terms of gauging what people are talking about, what people need, what people like, what people dislike. This is where we see about the dark theme, about somebody discovering the dark theme and saying, "Oh my God, this is so fantastic! I've been waiting for this for years." We see that and do contribute. We would love to review it. We would love to put it on the site.
Very cool. Okay, Carl, what do you have for the app of the week?
The app of the week this week is a Windows Store app called AppyText. This is actually an application written by one of the listeners of the show. And what this is a very simplistic text editor for one of those where you just want to get in, you want to write stuff and not have anything distracting you. He does have it is a free app that does have a pro version where you can get markdown support. It just gets out of your way and does a lot of stuff for you. Like you don't even have to save. It just does the auto saving for you as you type. That's one feature that I always love. I don't want to have to worry about losing anything that I've done anywhere. So apps that do stuff like that for me, I really like those thoughtful touches. And
it's available on HoloLens, I see.
Yeah, so if you have a HoloLens and need to write down some text in there.
Are you guys telling me that you're sending me a free HoloLens? Is that what I'm hearing?
Yeah, Carl's got two.
Carl,
so
all right.
Yeah, not with my money though. So
you heard it here first, folks.
Carl has no money. Send him some.
Okay. So Den, what I need you to do, I need you to pick a number between 1 and 4 inclusive.
1 and 4. 3.
Okay. Oh, here we go. This one. Okay. It's a game for kids, but we can play this. While stranded at sea, would you rather be on a good, safe boat with no food or be on an old, worn-out raft but with a box of food?
I'd rather have a good boat. You know what? Yeah. I'll find the island, but I'd rather be safe. Like, I know if a storm is coming, I'm good.
Yeah. You're
and if it's a good boat, you could probably like catch a fish or something.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
With the other boat, you only got a box of food. How long is that going to last?
Right.
Yeah, because you can go a long time without eating.
Unless
they usually say.
The box is a flotation device. Then you have a second boat.
Yeah, but if it's not waterproof.
See how you know that I'm a PM? Thinking out the box right there.
Yeah, it's just like a box of, it's like macaroni and cheese.
Okay. All right, never mind. Take it back. Take it back.
Something that needs cooked, right? Or rice, right? Like you're surrounded by water.
Oh, but... right. There's gonna be a bunch of like frozen foods in the yeah.
Yeah, it's a frozen. Well, it says box of foods.
Right. You don't know what's in it.
Yeah, or could it be like wine? It's like a box of wine.
Some people would go for that.
A box of frozen chicken breasts.
Yeah, I guess it's sufficient to some people.
Or it's like stovetop. Well, the question is, do you have water? Because like with the food, you're probably gonna need water, right? And I guess either way, I don't know. I mean, if you don't have water, you're dead anyway. So then the question is moot. So.
Well, I mean, you can survive longer, I guess, if you have. But I still want to like. What if it's
no? You're not. You're not.
It's a motorboat.
The thing is, if you don't have water, you're going to die of dehydration way before you die of not eating. So the water is
those like high-tech desalinizers.
Yeah. Okay. Would you rather have a good, safe boat and a desalinizer?
Are there any startups at sea?
No, there's just a machine that squeezes juice packets, but no juice packets.
Yeah, I can just get water in a towel and do it myself.
Yeah, it just squeezes the water out of a towel. And it's salt water.
Yeah, that was it.
Oh, anyway, Carl, pick a number.
I'll take number 4.
Number 4. Okay, let me find a free number 4 here. Okay, well, here we go. Wow, this one is wild. Would you rather live in a world where aliens are our masters or where insects are our masters?
Oh. I don't know how that would work with insects as masters. And I'm assuming that the aliens are going to be pretty domineering. So maybe there's a better chance of us overthrowing the insects. I'll go with that.
Yeah. You know what?
If they're like ants. Yeah, or they just like follow me. Is
it gonna be like insects like the size of insects, or is it gonna be like blown out insects, or is like giant?
Yeah.
I mean, I've played enough of Halo that I know that aliens can be dangerous. I don't know. Insects seems like we can deal with insects. I don't know.
Yeah. Sorry, Master, I've squashed you.
That's not a can of Raid, right?
Yeah. Yeah, but we can't. I don't know. I don't know. There's more questions than answers in this game, honestly. Okay, that was a disaster. So Dan, where can people find you?
Where can people find it? So I instead of like plugging my own site, I'd rather plug the Docs site. So do go to Twitter at DocsMSFT. This is our official Twitter account. The latest and greatest announcements are coming there. msdocs.uservoice.com is where we post and we keep up with all your feedback. So if there's anything broken, anything that you wish, go there and let us know. And those are two places for both feedback and questions. I'd be more than happy to answer that. We're pretty much have those open all the time, and the response time is fairly short. So go there.
Perfect. And Carl, where can people find?
I have a question.
Ahead,
are you the one behind Docs MSFT or one of the people? Because I will
pick
say
up that game again and see.
No,
would you rather Dan drive Docs MSFT or?
I will just say when we asked you to be on the show, I think you responded in like 10 seconds.
Yeah, I mean, push notifications are a wonderful thing. Yes, I am currently the one driving Docs MSFT. So if you see if you all of a sudden see some like inappropriate response or something, it's like, oh, like who's in trouble today? It's probably me.
Oh, I've been hacked.
Yeah. yeah. Yeah.
That's what you're supposed to say.
I don't think that works.
No, if you say something stupid and you realize, just say a whole bunch of other stupid stuff and then say you were hacked.
Right. It's like, I need to come up with 7 more tweets that are exactly this level.
Which is the stupidest response ever, because if you were hacked, then how do you have your password still, and how are you posting? It never makes sense.
I magically recovered it. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Didn't you have two-factor enabled? Somebody stole my phone too.
Yeah.
All right.
No, I've re-hacked back in. The hackers have lost. And I'm back in control.
Trace the IP with an interface in Visual Basic.
Yeah, I sent them a spike. That's an old reference. Okay, Carl, where can people find you?
You can find me on Twitter at Carl Schweitzer.
And you can find me at ytechie.com or on Twitter at twitter.com/ytechie. So, Dan, thank you so much for coming on here and talking about a subject that, seems kind of, boring, but it's actually pretty awesome the way that you guys are doing this. And you guys are doing great work over there.
Thank you. Thank you for having me here.